all, this is Ruthie in my kitchen, and I'm making leftover pie, and as the name suggests, that is a pie made from leftovers. Just cooking the onions in the grease from the meat, and just put that aside. There will be no recipe for this pie because I don't actually know how it's going to go. That is how a lot of my cooking works. But I thought I'd make a video while I have time, while I'm making this pie, because actually that needs a little bit more oil. Smells really nice. I don't think anything can really compete with the smell of onions cooking down. I thought I'd make a video because I am an artist, and I think a lot of the people watching my channel are artists, or they're very creative types, and when you are an artistic creative type, anxiety tends to be a bit of a struggle. I'm not talking about a medical condition, I'm just talking about sort of, you know, a temperament. And one of the things I have to be really, really careful with is I have to be extremely careful with what I put into my mind. But I find this quite a struggle because I think there's a fine line to walk between being ignorant of what has happened in the world and what might be going on in the world at the moment, and also protecting your mind. I think this is probably true for anyone, but when you are of the creative, highly strung disposition, I think this is absolutely non-negotiable. I think you have to protect your mind, because if you don't protect your mind, you can end up going into some very, very unhelpful and dark places. So I'm very careful with the sort of history I read, and I'm very careful with how much news I consume, because what can happen, also because I'm very creative and I have a great ability to visualize, so anything that goes on in my mind is probably going in high definition because I see in pictures. And I think this is pretty common with artistic, creative people. So anything I put into my mind, I'm going to see it, and I'm going to see it over and over and over and over again. So I have to be very, very careful with certain periods of history, and I have to be very careful with how much news and a certain kind of news I consume. But by the same token, I think that history is extremely important. I think being informed of world events is important too, although I would say history is more important for me personally. So I guess the question is, how do I, as an artistic, creative person who loves history, balance the need to be educated with keeping the mind functional, not getting overwhelmed with sadness? And I've actually developed this little thought experiment that I do, which I find really helpful. I just got my pie filling through this sensitive stage where you have to watch it and baby it, so now it's just simmering away quietly so I can give you my full and undivided attention and tell you my thought experiment that I invented to help myself balance the need to be educated and know what's going on in the world, and certainly what has gone on in the world, with retaining a ability to function in the world and not get all depressed and anxious and afraid to the point I can't do things. So what I think is this. Imagine you live next door to an elderly lady, and you love this elderly lady, and you live on the top of a slight hill, so your driveways go down on a slope. And imagine that this older lady has a hip replacement, and she's doing fine. She's healing quite nicely, and she can get all around. She's healed and she's mobile, but she still has a bit of pain, and you're pretty sure that she finds it quite painful to get her rubbish bin down and up from the curb. Now here's my thought experiment. Oh, she's very independent, stubborn lady that won't ask for help. So if you're going to take her bin down and up, you basically have to be very competitive, and you have to get out there in the morning before she can get it done, because she will not ask for help. And yeah, you just have to be pretty onto it to do this. But you love your neighbour and you want to help, and you know she appreciates it even if she won't actually ask you to do it. My thought experiment is this. When I'm trying to choose whether I read a history book on a certain period of history, or I watch a documentary on what's going on in the world today, or I consume news on a subject, I ask myself, will consuming this put me in an emotional state where I wouldn't be able to get up in the morning and get that rubbish bin down to the curb and back up for my neighbour, my imaginary neighbour? If the answer is no, it's fine, I'm going to be able to keep getting that rubbish bin up and down, then I read the book, or I watch the documentary, or I watch the news. It's fine. It's good to be informed. It's good to know what's happened in the past. It's good to know what's happening now. If the answer is yes, I think that this is going to make me so anxious and sad that tomorrow it's going to be a real struggle to actually get up and add that extra piece of care to my day. I don't watch the documentary. I don't read the book. I don't watch the piece of news, because I am convinced that just because we're upset and sensitive to the awful things that have happened in the past, or the awful things that are happening in the world outside our control, that is not a good enough reason to stop being able to do the good that we can in our circle of control. So if knowing about a subject and being informed about world events is going to impact my ability negatively to serve the people in my immediate circle, I don't look at it. And if I think I can handle it, then I do look at it. And that's my little thought experiment. And more than that, I actually pray. I ask God to give me wisdom, because it is no good at all not knowing what's happened in the past and what's happening now. And we do need to know what's happened in the past, because there are certain things that must never be forgotten, and they should not be forgotten most of all by decent people, because decent people will be the ones that stand up and sound the alarm. So if we're decent, we have an obligation to know, because the not so decent people won't care. But by the same token, we must be capable of functioning within our circle and looking after the people who are relying on us. And that's what I do as a highly creative, highly strung, fairly pathetic, unimpressive individual. That's how I balance it out, I think. If I had an elderly neighbour, would this stop me getting her wheelie bin up and down from the curb? If the answer is no, then I read the history book and I watch the documentary and I look at the news. If the answer is yes, then I say, you know what, God, I'm really sorry, but I can't do this. This is not for me today, because I'm not going to let fretting about that which I cannot change stop me from doing the good that I can do. So that's my little thought from my kitchen when I'm making my leftover pie. And, oh yeah, I knew there was something else I wanted to say on this. So this pie I'm making, right, it's got a lot of ingredients in it. It's not the best example because I don't have a real strong plan. I'm just throwing in a bit of this and a bit of that, and you know, it's coming together quite nicely. And the thing is, when you are a small, highly strung, easily frightened human, you can actually feel quite pathetic. And certainly in my case, I can be quite pathetic. It's not a case of feeling it. I really can be quite pathetic. But I think the thing to remember is just like a pie needs more than one ingredient, right? The world needs more than one kind of person. And that's why God makes different kinds of people. And You know, a violin and a spade do have aesthetically surface similarities. They both have a sort of shape down here like this, and then they have a long sort of neck thing. But at the end of the day, you have to store them quite differently, and you have to use them quite differently. I mean, if you just picked up your violin and started hiffing it into a store cupboard and just sort of threw it on the ground, well, pretty soon you would not have a violin. It's a very delicate instrument. But the fact that you have to care for it and store it and take, you know, you have to be quite careful with the violin, it doesn't mean a violin is worthless. And by the same point of view, just because a spade isn't particularly sensitive at all and you can just chuck it around and do whatever you like with it, that doesn't mean the spade is less valuable. I mean, if the only object available to agriculturalists had been the violin and you had to dig your potato patch with a violin, well, the world would have seen even more famine than it already has. But by the same point of view, is if the only music in the world we had was the ability to beat a stick on a spade, I think that would be a great loss. So yes, that's what I thought I would add, that there is room for everyone in the world. You just have to know what you are, and if you're a spade, get out there and dig, and if you're a violin, make beautiful music, and also know that if you are a violin, you probably shouldn't be trying to dig a potato patch, and if you're a spade, well, if you're a spade, you're a very useful instrument, and you have a job too. So I suppose what I'm saying, I tend to really admire spades in the world because they're so much more practical and they're so much more obviously necessary. But I have concluded that if God makes you a certain way, you just have to work with it. The main thing is that you are trying to find out what He wants from you and work with what He's given you and listen to Him and pray and use wisdom. And well, I think that is all I've got to say on the subject. And now I need to finish off my pie because it's smelling quite nice. Thank you for listening.